Elizabeth Clare Prophet, noted author, lecturer, and educator, interviews the special people who provide the missing dimension to the news that affects you. Courageous men and women from all over the world who have taken a stand for truth and justice and become spokesmen for the flame of freedom. Listen now as Elizabeth Clare Prophet and her guest discuss critical issues of the day. This week, Mrs. Prophet talks with Reverend Richard Wurmbrand, who spent 14 years in communist prisons, author of Tortured for Christ, The Underground Saints, The Answer to Moscow's Bible, and Sermons in Solitary Confinement.
Welcome to Summit University Forum, where the flame of freedom speaks. Our guest today is Reverend Richard Wurmbrand, who speaks for those who are the martyred Christians. He has his ministry in an organization called Jesus to the Communist World. Reverend Wurmbrand himself spent 14 years in prison. He comes from Romania and now speaks to the people of the whole world concerning the very great burden that is borne by Christians under communist oppression. Reverend Wurmbrand, thank you for being the flame of freedom that speaks at Summit University Forum.
Thank you. Very glad to be here.
Most of us have read your book, Tortured for Christ, a very wonderful, wonderful expose of the life of a Christian under the greatest hardship. We have read your other books, and we are looking forward to reading more. Christ on the Jewish Road, The Underground Saints, and Between the Hammer and Sickle. I know you have written more than 15 books on your experiences, and in your writing of books you have desired to bring the souls and the conscience of the Christians of the world to an understanding that it is because of the leadership of the West that Eastern Europe and communism is fully entrenched today, all the way from the beginning. We are very much aware of this. We would like to ask you to tell us your experience in the Soviet Union and here today.
Well, I'm Jewish, but my parents were secularized Jews. I really have been brought up without any religion. When I was a little child, I went to the synagogue, more to play with the other children. I did not understand what is happening there. The prayers were in Hebrew. I did not know Hebrew. And nobody taught me anything. And I grew up without the slightest knowledge of God. I was not only an atheist, I was a God hater. I had had a very, very bitter childhood. Very bitter. And then a very bitter youth. And I had not met any God who should have helped me. And if there is a God, I have to hate him. I hated him. In my childhood, I've had one experience with God and with Christ. But it was so transitory, and as a child I had forgotten it very soon. I remembered it only years after. One day I came from school with another boy. I had the age perhaps of 9 or 10. He stopped before a church. At that time I would not have known the difference between a Catholic church or a Mormon church or a Protestant church. I did not know what church means. And he said, "Wait for me a little bit. My father asked me to tell the priest something." I did not know what a priest is. "I will be back in a few minutes." I said, "No, I will enter with you." And that is how I entered the first time in my life in a church. I was very, very impressed. I saw a man crucified. My reason tells me I could not have seen a man crucified. I must have seen a picture or a sculpture of a man crucified. But I am still with the impression that I saw a man crucified. Now, I have been a child who has suffered very, very much. Since I was a little toddler, I have suffered very much. And here I saw somebody, I did not know who he was. He was with blood all over his body and with a crown of thorns. And his face was marked by so much suffering and nails driven into his hands and into his feet. I did not know what criminal he is, but even if he would have murdered hundreds of men, hang him, shoot him, why should he be tortured like this? I felt a very great compassion with this sufferer. I saw also a lady with a baby in her arms. Now, my reason tells me I could not have seen the lady. I must have seen again a sculpture or a picture, but I remembered I have remained with the impression that I saw a lady. And she looked to me with so much love. I was a child not used that anybody should look with love to me. First of all, I was a Jewish child, and in the east of Europe, to be a Jew is like it has been here 100 years ago to be a nigger or to be something like this. A nigger boy. I've been beaten since I was a little child because I'm Jewish, for this only crime. And I was very poor. I was an orphan boy, very badly dressed. I was the poorest dressed child in the whole school, and therefore the object of mockery of all the other children. And this lady looked to me with such a love, as if in this whole world there would be nobody else to love than me. I did not know who they were. Then the other boy spoke with a man dressed in black, the priest. Then the priest came to me and caressed me on my head. It meant so much to me. I have been an uncaressed child. It was perhaps the first time that somebody has caressed me. He caressed me. Now I know that they brought children to the Lord Jesus that he might touch them. We bring children to Sunday schools that somebody might teach them. But to Jesus they were brought that he should touch them, not teach them. Because his touch taught. There was so much gentleness and softness and goodness in his touch. No words were needed. And this man communicated his whole heart to me in a caress. And he said, "Little boy, what can I do for you?" I was frightened. Probably I'm not in the right place. I'm not meant to be here. I was so shy. And I said, "Just nothing. You can do for me nothing. I came here with the other boy." He said, "It can't be so. I am the disciple of one. His name is Jesus. And he has taught me never to allow anybody, but anybody, to pass near me without doing him a little bit of good. It is summer. It is hot outside. I will bring you a cup of cold water." And he brought me a cup of cold water. I came out from this church inebriated. It was as if this water has been changed in wine. I've met somebody with such a strange name, Jesus. He meant nothing to me, as most here probably have been brought up in homes where they've never heard about Buddha or about Krishna or about Muhammad. So I have not heard about Jesus, neither good nor bad. He meant just nothing to me. There exists one Jesus who teaches not to allow anybody, not even a poorly dressed, thin, frail Jewish orphan child. Don't allow him to pass near you without doing him a little bit of good. You might not have a coin for him, you might not have a chocolate for him, but everybody has a caress and has a glass of water. From that moment on, I have become a good friend of caresses. I wonder why Americans are so thrifty in caresses. Years pass without an American caressing his old mother, or even caressing his wife. By the way, husbands can be caressed too. And but I was a child, and when other things came, this impression passed, but it remained deep in the hidden parts of the heart. And I grew up as I would have liked a God to be this God of love. Well, I read much, and so, but I would have liked this. I was very sorry that God does not exist. I would have liked him to exist. That somewhere there should be a heart with love, which should beat for me. And I could not find him. At the age of 27, I was together with my beautiful wife. We were newly wed, and we were in a village in Romania. And there we met a carpenter who had prayed during years. He told me afterwards, "Since years I pray to God, God, I have served thee on earth. I wish to have my reward on earth, not in heaven. My reward should be, I should not die before I bring a Jew to Christ, because Christ himself is Jewish. But in my village there are no Jews, and I'm poor, old, sick. I can't go around to seek Jews. You bring a Jew into my village, and I will bring him to Christ." Now, I'm a pastor apart who am very sure that God never fulfills a prayer. God never fulfills a prayer. He prayed to have one Jew. He did not get one Jew, he got two. God always gives more and better than what you ask. He never gives you what you ask. We would be in big trouble if he would give us only what we ask. And so 2 Jews came, my wife and I, and he gave us the New Testament to read. I really could not read it. I could only weep over it. I compared continually my life with the life of Jesus. He always good, I always bad. He always pure, I impure. He honest, I dishonest. He truthful, I a liar. And I regretted my whole past life. I regretted my whole past life. And I would not say that I became a Christian, because that is a word of very great honor. The first Christians entered in the arena of circuses to be devoured by lions, and they said Christianus, so I am a Christian. So to say I'm a Christian is a very big word. I don't very often use this word. But I believed in him, I trusted in him, and foremost I loved him. And that is how a new life started. I felt very soon the call for ministry. I prepared myself. And I became a minister, but I became a minister in the wrong time in Romania. We had the Nazis in our country. I had committed with the Nazis 2 irreparable sins. First, to be a Jew, which was a big crime, and secondly, to be a Christian, which was again a crime. And that is how my wife and I, we both arrived into Nazi prisons. A great part of our family died in the Holocaust. And then at the end of World War II, the communists took over my homeland. The Soviet army invaded us. And towards the Soviets, we have again committed 2 crimes. We have been freed from the tiger, but it is like a lion freeing you from the tiger. The communists were as bad as the Nazis were. And for them again, it was a crime to be a Jew and to be a Christian. And the church had to go underground. I was one of the organizers of the underground church in Romania. We started a secret missionary work in the Soviet army. We printed for them secretly gospels and so on, which all were crimes, and we did all kinds of such things. And we could work underground almost 4 years. But every offender is caught once, so I was also caught. And I was sentenced to 20 years in jail, then it was increased to 25 years. Very soon after this, my wife, who took over my work, she also was put in jail. And I was 14 years in communist jails. The first years, we were kept, everyone alone in a cell, 30 feet beneath the earth. We never saw sun, moon, snow, flowers, stars. With the time I had forgotten that these things exist. 14 years, I've never seen a color. We always saw the gray walls of the cell and our gray uniforms. I had forgotten that blue and green and yellow and violet exist. I'm mistaken. Green, I saw they gave us bread with mold on it. That was green. That was the only color which I saw. We never saw a color. We never had neither the Bible nor any other book all these 14 years. We never had a bit of paper. All intellectual activity had ceased. We had very, very little food. There were times when we had 1 slice of bread a week. Otherwise, soup of dirty potato peels and cabbage with unwashed intestines. I will not give you the whole menu. And very, very little food. There were beatings, there were tortures. There were some tortures of such a kind that they could not be said on television because young girls or children might see. It's not good for them even to hear what is happening. 14 years, I've never seen a lady. Never seen a child, 14 years. Now I can't restrain myself. Wherever I see a child in a restaurant, on the street, I hug it, I embrace it, and I hear sometimes behind my back whispers a queer kind of a pastor. Look how he stops every child and kisses it. I can't restrain myself because I have not seen children 14 years. Happily I can restrain myself. I don't hug every lady whom I meet on the street. I could be in trouble. Sometimes they hug me. And all intellectual activity had ceased. But in prison we continued our pastoral work. When we were alone in the cell, I knew that my duty is to win men for Christ. And I asked God, how should I win men for Christ when I'm alone in a prison cell? And God replied, I've given you a mind, so you find out how to win. And we found out that you can win men for Christ even when you are alone. There exists the Morse code. You know, the code through which cables are conveyed. A, B, C, D, E, F, and so on. I will not tell you the whole alphabet. There exists such an alphabet, and one prisoner learns it from the other. And through this alphabet, we tapped through the wall the good news about Jesus. And afterwards, when we were in common cells, we met men who have been won for Christ, from thieves, murderers, political prisoners, all kinds, through this method. And then when we were put in common cells, and I had a parish, I had them all there, and it was not a well-paid parish, but otherwise it was an ideal parish, because here, if somebody does not look like my sermon, he does not come back next Sunday. There, my parishioners had to be there if they liked me or not. And they were there the whole week, and we could preach, and we could teach, and we could... So, in the end, I took it well. And I entered in prison with a smile on my face, and I came out from prison also with a smile. Not only I speak about myself, but I am one of the thousands who have been in jail, and thousands are still in jail. I'm a lucky fellow. I was in jail only 14 years. The Baptist pastor Nikolai Khrapov in Russia died recently after 28 years in jail. And Petkus is in jail since 35 years. And the Orthodox monk Basil Shipilov and Michael Ershov are in jail in Russia since 40 years. 40 years. And Francis Zhen Shuang in China died recently after 26 years in jail. And Nobel in Cuba is in jail since 24 years, and so on. Well, when I came out from jail, I started again my underground work. But now I could not really do it anymore. The whole police was after me, was dogged by them. And the members of the underground church thought that I could be more useful if I would come abroad and tell here the story, what is happening there. God has given me the gift. I speak almost all major European languages. And communists hate capitalism, but they love capital very much. And for money they sell their citizens. They practice slave trade just as it was in the south of the United States 150 years ago. And they sell their citizens, and they sold me, a Norwegian church organization, paid for me and for my family, and that is how we could come out. And now we have started here an organization called Jesus to the Communist World, an organization which helps the persecuted Christians in communist countries. We smuggle into them Bibles and other Christian literature, we broadcast in their languages, and we help families of Christians who are in jail. There are at this moment thousands of Christians in jail. In Vietnam, in China, in Russia, Czechoslovakia, Romania, everywhere. Not to speak about the African communist countries, Ethiopia, and Angola, and Mozambique, and Congo. Everywhere there are Christians in jail. That is what I do.
As your book is called Tortured for Christ, we can see that it is never ended. When the individual accepts Christ as his Savior, and Savior lives in his body with the Holy Spirit and the Father, then he becomes again the vessel that is tortured. This great path of salvation has been promoted so much by the founding of our nation. It was founded based on freedom of religion. We consider ourselves a Christian nation today, and yet we find that our government is silent on this persecution of Christians. We find that Jews do much to help Jews in the Soviet Union, and we receive a lot of press coverage each time one is released or one is withheld. But we find that as a Christian nation, our government itself does not take a stand in its dealings with the Soviet Union based upon the fact that Christians are being tortured. I'm wondering what you are able to do at the level of legislation, at the level of the nations of the West, to bring much greater power to bear on this Soviet and world communist persecution of Christians.
Well, the first thing is America must say, my sin, it is my sin that all these other nations are under communism. I have lived the end of World War II in Romania. I have seen the Soviet army when they invaded us. They did not have one rifle which was not American. They did not have one car, one truck which was not American. They did not have one can of food which was not American. America had the whole power, and Russia had none. And to such a weak power as Russia, They did not take half of Europe. It was given to them at Yalta.
That's right.
By the President of the United States and by the Prime Minister of Britain. Somehow we have been betrayed.
That's right.
I'm sorry to use such harsh words, but the World War II has been started for the defense of the independence of Poland. That is why the war was started, when Hitler attacked Poland. And then they gave the whole of Poland. So what the American government and also the people which has chosen this government, it is also responsible. We have not only personal sins, we have also national sins. There should be a great movement of repentance in America, recognizing, look what we have done. And the same has happened in Cuba. We have given Cuba in their hands. And we have given also the African communist countries in their hands. Angola, Mozambique, and so on. We could have stopped it. And we try our best. We send our literature wherever we can. We try to speak with those of the White House and of the Department of State. And wherever we can, we say, some congressmen, with some senators. I must say that it happens again, what is written in the Gospel. The common people heard him gladly. It is written about Jesus. But once you arrive to the higher ones, they did not wish to hear about Jesus. And the more hearts of the common people have opened themselves to this message. We did not arrive to those of high degree. Perhaps it was our inability, but we did not arrive to influence them much. Lenin, who is the founder of modern communism, he has said, when we will decide to hang all the capitalists will compete with each other who should sell us the ropes. And he was wrong, because they did not compete with each other who should sell the ropes, but who should give the ropes on credit, and they will not pay. That is what is happening. After some 13 years in jail, once the director of the prison convened us in a big hall and said to us, you stupid men, you idiots, you have hoped that the Americans will come to free you. Well, I can give you the good news. The Americans come, but they don't come to help you, they come to help us. They give us loans, and they give us technology, they give us everything we need, and you, like stupid people, have believed in them. And it is a very grave situation, and nations will respond before God for what they have done, and I hope there will be a repentance in the American people.
It appears to be a great fear on the part of the leadership who have acted in fear of communism or communist leadership, or Churchill and Roosevelt in fear of Stalin. We have seen this in our history, and we know that it has brought us to a confrontation of great magnitude in this time. And we see that still we do not have the proper response. And again we have cooperation with the Chinese communists to now give them technology, to give them what they will have also to build themselves a military might.
When I was in Miami, some Christians took me to an ocean show, and they showed there a young man. He was barefoot, and he played with an alligator. He hit him with a stick on his head. He took him by his tail and turned him around, and the alligator snapped at him. I was so afraid. I said to the man, listen, you can earn your livings otherwise. Here, once the alligator will bite you and you will die. He said, no, the alligator will not bite me. I said, do you have an agreement with the alligator? He said, no, I have no agreement, but before every show, the alligator is overfed, and an overfed alligator does not bite. That is the situation of America. To be an American is so comfortable, so comfortable. Why should I move a little bit? The armchairs are so comfortable, and color television, and I've eaten well, and I can have an apple pie, and I can have another pie, and I can drink, and I can go to a restaurant, and the car waits for me outside, and I have money in the bank. And why should I trouble this whole thing, no?
Well, today we have this insensitivity spreading to liberal Christians who are for a socialist world government, or priests who are championing Marxism and liberation through Marxism in South America. So we realize that this cancer has invaded the church of compromise, so that one does not have to wrestle with the beast in oneself or in the world. One does not have to have an existence of confrontation. So then we have this nucleus of the Christians whom you represent, both the martyrs and those here who are helping them. What are they doing to alleviate this situation?
There is priests, there is pastors, there is rank and file Christians who have place in their heart for something else than this love towards Christ. They say, well, love towards Christ, but together with what politics? Should it be Marxist politics or anti-Marxist politics? What kind of politics? Well, I love Christ, but which of the social systems and so on? They put so many questions. They are not inebriated with this love of Christ. Nothing else should count than Christ. And if you love Christ from all your heart, then in no case can you be a Marxist, because Marx hated God. I have published a book called Was Marx a Satanist? God gave me this grace to find documents which have never been published by anybody. I found them. But they can't be challenged. We have the documentation. Written by Karl Marx, by his wife, by his daughter, by his son-in-law, by his nearest friends, in which he says, and his wife says, he's high priest of a sect of devil worshippers, as we have them in San Francisco. We have a Satanist sect, and there is in Europe such sects. He was a high priest of such a sect. He says, not that there is no God, he propagated atheism, but he was not an atheist. He says he hates God. He says, if you would ask anybody in the world, what was the aim of Karl Marx? Everyone would tell you, well, socialism, the improvement of the situation of the labor class, there should be no exploitation and so on. He says, you will find the whole bibliography in my book. He says, my aim is to enter into hell, drawing whole mankind after me, and there to laugh, I have succeeded. It's written by his hand. You can have the whole documentation. I wonder how men who claim to belong to Christ, and perhaps they belong to Christ, but are led astray, can go together with God haters. They are led astray by the fact that communism propagates very beautiful ideas, but the language of seduction is the same as the language of love. If I wish to have a girl for one night and then to throw her away like a dirty rag, I will tell her, I love you so much. And if I wish a girl honestly for marriage, I will also tell her I love you so much. Very rare are the girls who know to make a distinction between the words are the same. The voices are not exactly the same. You must, Jesus says, my sheep know my voice. It's not because the devil says the same words as Jesus says. He also says, I wish to make you like gods. Jesus also says, you are gods. But somehow the voice, you should recognize the voice. And communists come with very nice slogans everywhere for liberty and for improvement of the situation of the poor and so on. And there are Christians who believe them. I try. I've written several books about this subject. Answer to Moscow's Bible, I've written Karl Marx Satanists and others. We try to spread them. They've been translated in many languages. I'm not the only author who has written in this sense. There are many. And we try and we hope. That's all what we can do.
How do you explain the drunkenness, the intoxication of Christians who, hearing your words, knowing the founding principles of communism, seeing the murder, the Holocaust in Afghanistan today, seeing these things, yet remain? Are they devils? Are they the seed of that the devil sowed as tares among the wheat? Are those who are with them who are converted to Christ the light bearers who are momentarily hypnotized? Is there a core of evil on earth that is behind world communism?
Well, on what men do, I have to put always the best construction. I always hope the best for them. They are probably, many of them are ignorant. Many of them simply don't delve into things. They are not deep thinkers. They are not researchers. They've heard something and they go behind them. But really, my experience of life, not that I've read only about it, is that when you fight with communism, you don't have it to do with flesh and blood. You don't have it to do with Marx or with Lenin or with those who represent them now. You have it to do with evil forces, unseen forces, really demonic forces. I've seen what they do to you if you dare to disclose the satanic character of communism. We have it to do with them, and therefore our fight should also be spiritual. I don't believe in simply we will spend hundreds of billions of nuclear armament. They have nuclear armament, we have nuclear armament. They hate, we will hate them. No armament, neither conventional nor nuclear armament, can lead a war. Only soldiers can lead a war. And in order that soldiers should lead the war, the soldiers must have the right spirit and must know what they fight for and should be ready to die for this. They must be inspired by an ideal, and they must know what is the opposed ideal and in whose service they stand. This is unexisting in America. This is unexisting in America. And therefore I believe that America needs not only a material armament, it needs first of all a spiritual armament. And every one of us should try to do his little thing. We don't know from where the salvation will come. Sometimes it comes through a very, very little man. And I don't know, from those who watch here television, there might be some little thing, some little body who can do something big. Big in prayer, might be better in prayer than I or you. No? And can do also something good. You can simply write to Chernenko, you write to Teng in China or to Ceausescu in Romania. You never know what can happen. If only we put ourselves in the service of God and allow God to have everything of us.
Everything.
If God has everything of us, he can use the smallest man. He used the little David to defeat Goliath when all the Jewish army could not do it. That is what the purpose, I believe, of such televisions and of all our activity. We appeal to the little ones.
The little people. What do you think are the greatest gains you have made since you have begun your ministry in the West? What are the greatest accomplishments you see in staying the hand of world communism?
Well, I can't say that I personally have had successes, but when I came to America, and then to the free world from America, I was a completely unknown man. My English was very poor. I knew nothing here in America. I knew nobody. I had no money in my pocket. And I wished to create a mission which should tell these things and should work also behind the Iron Curtain to bring men to Christ there and to bring communists to Christ. I had this idea. But I had no idea how to start this. I did not know even a good English and so on. And I remember I entered in restaurants. I never looked to the food. I always looked only to the prices. And the prices were not good for me. There was something cheap, but I could not eat it. It was hot dog. I could not understand why the civilized people eat dog. I could not. And I walked out from the restaurants. I walked out from the restaurants without having eaten and so on. And then one day, it was in the time of the anti-Vietnam rallies. And I saw posters about the anti-Vietnam rallies. Now, I've never seen in my life. I could not imagine that an army fights for its country and the countrymen make demonstrations against their own army. It was too much for me. I could not understand it. So I went to see it. And as my English was poor, I stood near the rostrum from where the speaker spoke. He was a Presbyterian pastor with a clerical collar, just like me. And he spoke against LBJ. I did not know who LBJ was. If a pastor says he's bad, then probably he's bad. He spoke against war. I'm also against war. I'm also for peace. But then he began to praise communism. That was too much for me. And as he was a little fellow, and I'm 6'3", I gently pushed him aside. I did it with gentleness. I did it with gentleness. But I was now on the podium, and I had the microphone. And I said, why do you speak about communism? What do you know about communism? I'm a doctor in communism. He said, how do you know about communism? I said, I will show you immediately. And I undressed myself. It was in Philadelphia. I undressed myself to the belt, and I showed him I have 18 marks of tortures on my body. And I said to him, that is what the communists have done to me. He said, why? I said, suppose that I have murdered people. Oswald here has killed a president. Was he tortured? Ruby killed Oswald. Was he tortured? I asked the public there. Should a murderer be tortured? And they shouted, no, he should not be tortured. He should be hanged, but he should not be tortured. Well, I've never been accused of murder. I'm a pastor just like he. And he, instead of praising Christianity, of praising Christ and the martyrs, he praises those who martyrize the Christians. He's a Judas. And then his audience booed him as a Judas. Somebody went and cut the wire of the microphone. With this, the communist rally was finished, and I was arrested. And as I had been arrested by the Nazis, by the communists, now I've been arrested by the American police. I have committed 2 offenses. First of all, in Pennsylvania, it is unlawful to undress yourself in public. Secondly, I have disturbed a meeting which was legal. Yes, the communists are as legal as everybody. I was arrested. The fact is that next day I was in the newspapers, and that is how the Senate called me. I should testify before the Senate about what has happened, then I should testify before the Congress. And so I became a known person. And that is... Then I got invitations to universities, to churches, and so on, and I could start this mission. So we have done it. We have had big meetings sometimes. We have this mission now in 42 countries of the world. And we try to do our best. We are not the only ones. There are others. You also fight against communism. And everyone, the smallest here, can do something about it. Try to write. Write to Chernenko about your Christian faith. Write to Ceausescu. Somebody will read this letter. If not Chernenko, his wife might read it, or his secretary, or anybody. Pilate probably had gotten letters for Jesus. He did not read them. His wife read them. No? And you never know from where it comes. Write. Write to your congressman, write to your senator, write to your president. Tell them what is happening. And the question which you have put to me, put them to your president. How is it that we always hear the defense of the Jews, which is very good that you take the defense of the Jews. I'm Jewish myself. But why in the world do they always say that the Jews should be allowed to emigrate? And if one has committed the crime in Russia not to be a Jew, should he not be allowed to emigrate? Why always say about them? The Jews are really arrested and beaten. Now, when I was in jail, I always had to get 2 beatings. One for being a Jew and one for being a Christian. until I learned the lesson. As often as they shouted, all the Jews out for beating, I did not go, I'm a Christian. When they shouted, all the Christians out for beating, I did not go, I'm a Jew. but it is wrong. It is wrong. These are protests inspired by petty politics, you know. I wish to have the Jewish votes, I have to have those votes, and you know, you make these things. And every one of us can write to the congressman, to the senator, can write to our local newspaper and ask that, and if everyone would be involved, you never know from where something good can happen.
We're very concerned about what is happening to Christians behind the Iron Curtain today. Can you tell us what is their plight?
Well, the situation differs in different communist countries. In China, our mission, Jesus to the Communist World, works in almost all communist countries. We smuggle in Bibles and Christian literature, but we also get reports about what is happening there. In China, there were 2 or 3 years of a little bit bigger freedom after the fall of the Gang of Four, after the death of Mao Zedong. But now they tighten the screws again. There are many Christians in prison. We know for sure about 1 jail in which there are 400 Catholic priests. But they don't put in jail only the Catholics, they put the Protestants too. So, and they don't put only the priests, but they put only laymen, but also laymen and women. So there are many Christians in jail. We know for sure about Christians who have been executed as criminals. Francis Zhen Shuang, a Catholic bishop, he was 24 years in prison, then he was released. He started again his underground work. He was put in jail again, and he died. And he has 4 brothers who are also priests, and all 4 are in prison. So there is great persecution, but there is not only persecution in China. In China, something amazing has happened. Before the communists take over, in China there were 3.5 million Christians, Catholic and Protestants and Mormons and whatever you like together, whosoever says that he believes in Christ. There were 3.5 million. Now, after almost 40 years of fierce terror, the Protestants alone are considered to be 50 million. The Catholics also have increased very much. We don't have their figures. We have a mushrooming of Christianity in Red China. And the communists are alarmed about this. And I wonder very much why our administration speaks about the evil which is in Russia and never says a word about the evil which is in China. And to China we give again technology and loans and whatever, which makes us to believe that everything which is said against Russia is really not for Christ's sake, but out of politics and out of economic interests. Nobody speaks about what is happening in China. In Vietnam, many Christians are in jail. Many churches have been closed. They've given drugs to Nguyen Van Tang, the archbishop. They've given him drugs, and they've put him under hypnosis. And under hypnosis and drugs, his will has been broken, and he gave the names of those with whom he worked underground.
Oh my.
And another 100 priests perhaps have been, and others have been arrested. And this man can't find peace anymore. He feels himself as a Judas who is betrayed. But you are a Judas only if by your free choice and in good conscience you do something. In Russia, again, we have figures and names and addresses of hundreds of Christians who are in jail, as well Orthodox as the Catholics in Lithuania, in Ukraine, and Baptist, Pentecostals, and so on. Also Jews who are in jail. Many are in jail in Czechoslovakia, in Romania. In Yugoslavia, there are some priests in jail, but they really deserve it. They were criminals. The Virgin Mary is said to have appeared in Meshhorode in Montenegro. But she appeared without the approval of the communist authorities. Which was surely wrong from her side. No, we don't know yet. The Catholic Church has not accepted yet as a miracle. It might be just a subjective experience of these children. We don't know what has happened. But in any case, it has happened without the approval of the communist authorities, and the priest was put in jail for the appearance of Virgin Mary. Vlasic is his name. And in Cuba, there are many Christians in jail. In Nicaragua, nobody mentions the Christians there, but they entered in churches, they raped the girls in the Sumo tribe and in the Mosquito tribes at the frontier of Honduras. The Sandinistas, the communist troops, entered in churches, raped the girls, then put fire to the churches. We have the names, we have the addresses. They quartered a Christian lady, they cut her in 4 pieces as you cut an ox to sell his meat. That is what they have done. And so on and so on. Then in African communist countries, terrible things are happening there, in Ethiopia. But there are also some, you can also laugh, because God intervenes. In Ethiopia, 2 Christians have been sentenced to death to be electrocuted. They've learned American techniques, they were electrocuted. And they had an electrical chair, but it was a communist electrical chair, not an American electrical chair. And as they pushed the lever, there was no electricity. No, they tried to find spare parts, but it is not America where you went in a shop and buy a spare part. So after weeks passed, they could not electrocute them. So they said, all right, we will shoot them. And they put them to a wall, and they had to shoot. But they were communist sharpshooters, they were not American sharpshooters. And they shot 2 of their own soldiers. And then the communist officer who led this whole thing was very mad at this, and he gave them a good beating. They are free, these brethren are free. But Kimbekete and Alain Loasso in Congo are in jail, and Tumza, the General Secretary of the Lutheran Church in Ethiopia, and so many who are in jail there. In Angola, which is again communistic, Chiasso, in the town of Chiasso, the communists entered the church during the Sunday morning service. They drew with them a living lamb, and they said, you are worshippers of the lamb, so we bring you a lamb. And they slaughtered the lamb there in the church. They put the head of the lamb on the altar, and the pieces of the lamb all over around. And they said, if you don't give up worshipping the lamb, you will be killed here on the spot. And the pastor and a great part of the congregation were killed right there in the church in Chiasso. In Mozambique, terrible things are happening. You can't say everything on television where little children can hear these things. In Poland, not only is this priest Popiluszko, about whom we heard recently, has been killed. Some 100 persons have been killed for being Christians and standing up for freedom. But what is the beauty is about Popiluszko. One of the most beautiful things in the whole history of the Universal Church has happened. After they killed Popiluszko, 200,000 Christians demonstrated before the headquarters of the police, shouting, "We forgive you." Something grand. Something grand. No? It was reliving the scene on Golgotha, Jesus crucified, and Jesus saying, "I forgive you." And here they were simple fellows workers in factories, what they were, and they had the Spirit of Christ. It came into their minds. It's a natural thing. I have it to do with a criminal. I go and tell him he's beloved and he's forgiven. Splendid. It was worthwhile that Papilushka should die in order that such a miracle from God should happen. I've not heard about such a thing in the whole history of the church. So there are beautiful things happening. We see only 3 dimensions usually. I wondered why in Isaiah 6 it is written that angels shout to each other. They sing to each other. They say, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord, and full is the earth and heaven with his glory." Now, why have you to repeat this again and again? It should be obvious that the earth is full with his glory. No, it is not obvious. The obvious is that the earth is full with suffering and sorrows and pain and injustice. It is obvious that the earth is full with ugly things, but there exists something above the obvious. There exists a 4th dimension, the spiritual dimension, in which you see that amidst this valley of shadow of death, there exists so much beauty of character and real saints. The saints are no more only in the icons. There are saints who walk among us. I have been with saints in heaven. I will be saints on earth. I will tell you just the story of one saint with whom I have been. We were after the years of solitary confinement, we were in common cells, and we had among us a pastor, an evangelical pastor. He was the greatest saint whom I ever have met. He was sentenced to 22 years of jail, but he deserves them. He was really a criminal. And the crime consisted in the fact that on an Easter Sunday, he had preached about John 21, where it is written that the risen Lord appeared to his disciples who had fished the whole night and caught nothing. And he told them, "Throw your nets on the right side." And then they had a very rich fishing. Next day he was arrested. "You rogue, you rascal. How did you dare to pronounce a counter-revolutionist sermon yesterday?" But what was counter-revolutionist in it? Why did you say that the net should be thrown on the right side, not on the left side? You are a right-winger, you are on the side of the American imperialists, and you are against us and against socialism. He replied, "I did not say these things, Jesus said them. And if you don't agree, go and arrest Jesus. Why did you arrest me?" "Yeah, but there are thousands of verses in the Bible, and you have chosen to read and to preach about this verse. You have shown your heart." He got 22 years in jail, leaving behind a wife and with 6 or 7 children in utter poverty, the family also deported. But he was such a nice man. We were together with him in the prison cell. In times when we had 1 slice of bread a week, he would give away half of it to another prisoner who was weak, who was old, who was sickly. He would give it to him, and he would eat only the half of it. And then soup of dirty potato, peels, cabbage with unwashed intestines. He would be satisfied to have, but to give. He had a pullover. He shared it with somebody else. It's not California, it is bitter winter. And he wore it a little bit, then the other one wore it a little bit, and he again, and the other one again. They both survived a very bitter winter. And he never was he always was good. We all the others were afraid. We said to ourselves, if a Christian must be like him, we have no hope to go to heaven, because nobody of us was like him. Then after perhaps 3 years together, one day he got indignant about nothing at all, about a trifle. "Why did you put this here? I told you to put it there." And he shouted at another Christian. Then we embraced him and said, "Brother, how good that you also have a sin. Now you have given us hope." That was a man about whom you were happy to see a sin in him. You were happy to see a sin in him. He was an exceptional man. And now we had in this prison cell, we had Christians, Jews, patriots, but we had also communists. There are plenty of communists in communist prisons. They have a religion of hatred, and once you hate, you never stop hating. They hate not only their enemies, they hate their comrades too. Khrushchev has kept his own wife in prison 8 years. And Stalin has killed his own family. They hate each other. The Chinese communists hate the Russian communists, and so on. And that is how it happens that if one communist quarrels with another communist, he's put in jail and tortured just as if he would be an anti-communist. And we had such a communist with us in this cell. And now this good pastor tried to bring this communist to Christ. And the communist said to him, "Please, please don't sermonize me. I'm so hungry and I yearn after my family and I'm so depressed. I have no hope. I can't take sermons. If you wish to speak to me about Christ, put everything in a nutshell. Tell me in a sentence or two what you have to say and leave me alone." How is Christ? And the pastor, in a moment of supreme spiritual courage, replied, "You wish to know how Christ is? He is like me. And then the communist said, if he's like you, I can trust in him and I can love him. Now, very rarely a Christian should say these words, but that is what it means to be a Christian, to be a Christ in miniature.
It's a wonderful thing to remember. Christ is like me.
Christ is like me. If only it is a reality. I was happy to have met such a man, and I've met several such men. I've met men with whom you felt that the touching of his garments heals. Such beautiful souls. And my wife has been in jail with some of the Catholic and Orthodox nuns and with other Protestant ladies. And some of them were, she says, simply angels from heaven. And I wish to tell you just one thing more, because I speak about my wife. She has written a book, The Pastor's Wife, about her experiences in prison. I wish to tell just about one experience of hers. She was at a certain moment in jail with there were 20 or 30 female prisoners. And among them a young girl of 18 or 20 sentenced to death for her faith. Now, it is not easy to die at the age of 18. Life smiles to you. And she was a very beautiful girl. And now the last evening had come. The guards brought some gruel as food in earthen vessels. Everybody was hungry, but nobody could eat. They all pitied the young and beautiful girl who had to die that night. It was her last night. And the executions took place always exactly at midnight. That is why the Christians called the fire squad the midnight bride. Now it was the last evening. At a certain moment she lifted this earthen vessel. Her face began to shine. And she said, I have a boyfriend. He loved me heartily. And I love him. And he hoped that one day I will be in his embraces. But tonight I will be shot. And after a few years, this my body, after which he longed, will become clay, just like the clay out of which the potter made this vessel. And after a few more years, what has been my body, perhaps another potter will make a vessel out of what has been my body. Who knows what is in this vessel? Perhaps what has been once the dreaming eye of a lover. But I will not die. Because I am not my body. The body is only an outward garment. And when the garment passes away, the I will remain. The I does not die. Jesus has promised, whosoever lives and believes in me will never die. And I believe these words of Jesus more than the open grave which waits already for me. I believe the words of Jesus more than the bullets which will pierce my heart tonight. I believe the words of Jesus more than death, which waits for me tonight. Tonight I will not die, but by the grace of God, because He is good, I will enter through portals of pearls in the city of gold. I will see and I will hear angels playing on their harps. I will be with the best men and the saints of all centuries. And above all, I will be with Jesus Himself, and resting in His bosom, I will wait for my boyfriend to come too. And there we will be reunited forever. And then a few minutes before midnight, they came to pick her up. And as she passed through these vaulted corridors of the subterranean prison in which her voice was bounced from one wall to the other, the ladies who had remained behind in tears heard her how she walked through the corridors reciting the creed, the same creed which we recite, only that on her lips it had another value. We all recite the creed. But she said, I believe in one God, maker of heaven and earth. She believed that there exists not only earth, but also heaven. And she was ready to forsake earth at the age of 18 because she loved heaven. She said, I believe in the one Lord Jesus Christ. That is what I say too. But for her, He was really the Lord. At His command, she was ready to die at the age of 18. And then her last words were heard. I believe in the resurrection of the body. I also say it, but she believed it. She gave her body. I believe in the resurrection of the body and in life everlasting. Then a few shots were heard. Poor communists believed that they have killed her. They did not know that they have sent her in the embraces of the most beautiful of bridegrooms. That is our experience behind the Iron Curtain. There is very much suffering there. There is a persecuted church. But just as the diamond is nothing else than black coal under very high pressure. So, under this pressure of Nazism first, of communism, the church has become more beautiful than ever. And to her applies the words of the Song of Solomon. The bridegroom says to her, "You are the fairest among women." That is how the church is everywhere. The church is without a wrinkle, without a spot. The church is everywhere beautiful. But there the beauty is seen better. Suffering is the beauty partner of God. And therefore, what I would say from all our experience to American Christians, don't fear suffering. It is a lie of the devil that suffering is your enemy. If God sends it, welcome it. Be happy that you have the suffering and not somebody else. If you have a riotous son, riotous children, or if you have parents who are unjust to you, or an unfaithful spouse, or a husband who batters you, and you are a Christian, be happy that he batters you and he is not somebody else's husband. You can take it being a Christian. The other lady could not take it. And you can take it from your parents, and you can take it from your children. And if whatever great temptation you have, be happy that you have it and not somebody else. Because you have Christ. And through Christ you can do everything. You can overcome everything. That is our message to the American people. And I thank you very much for having invited me to tell these things.
Reverend Richard Wurmbrand, thank you for being the flame of freedom that speaks at Summit University Forum.
God bless you.
Thank you.
You've been watching Summit University Forum with Elizabeth Clare Prophet. Summit University Forum, where the flame of freedom speaks. Elizabeth Clare Prophet, noted author, lecturer, and educator, interviews the special people who provide the missing dimension to the news that affects you. Courageous men and women from all over the world who have taken a stand for truth and justice and become spokesmen for the flame of freedom. The preceding public access program has been presented through the assistance of Summit University, Box A, Malibu, California, 90265. If you would like to know more, call this number or write this address.